Mute. Hello. Check.
Can you hear me now on Zoom? Whoa. Is it official? Maybe we begin? All right. Sorry for the delay, everyone. Another glitch that we're not exactly sure why or how that happened, but we'll figure it out, and hopefully that'll never happen again. But good morning and welcome to the virtual Zoom gathering of Summit Unitarian Universalists Fellowship's Sunday worship service. We are making progress towards our hybrid in-person services that also happen in the sanctuary. And this morning, I am just looking around and I see roughly 20 people in the sanctuary, maybe more, and we had some late arrivals. Maybe we'll have a few more. But we request your patience while we are still figuring out our glitches. As we were just saying, every week seems to present a new little glitch that we have to tamp down. So if you may have heard the recording sound, we are already recording this morning's service, but we will turn it off when we do our community gathering at the close of service. And now, to help us enter the spirit of worship, let us turn our minds and our hearts and listen to our prelude. Good morning, Barbara.
This is Fanny Mendelssohn Hensel's May from the Year. She wrote a piece, a cycle called Das Jahr, which means the year for every month of the year, and this is the spring song. And thinking about, in Northern Europe, how May must really be lovely when you really finally feel that it is spring.
Thank you, Barbara. Welcome again to the Sunday morning virtual worship service of Summit UU Fellowship. Summit is a liberal religious community bound together by shared principles that are drawn from world religions, humanist teachings, nature and science, philosophy, and our own personal practices. We are a religion of love and inclusion, and the mission of Summit is to commit ourselves to building a more compassionate, just, and sustainable world. And if you're new to Unitarian Universalism or Summit, we would like to know more about us. We invite you to go to our website, summituuf.org. Click on the visitors button, fill out an online connection card, and someone will follow up with you. As we always do before we begin our service, we'd like to acknowledge that our fellowship physically resides on unceded Kumeyaay land. And for more than 10,000 people, this land has been and continues to be the home of the Kumeyaay people. We recognize the violent history of colonization in California and honor the legacy of the continuing presence of the Kumeyaay Nation. Just a few announcements this morning. I'd like to make a personal plea for help for the Sunday Services Committee, especially coming up over the summer. We could use extra tech hands specifically. We have the people that can do the speaking, but we could definitely use a few extra hands who can do the Zoom usher job. And it sounds like it's very tricky, and it's really not. It's just clicking videos on. It can become nerve-wracking because you have to pay attention to the whole service, and your timing has to be right, but it's technically not that difficult. So if you have any tech savvy, computer savvy whatsoever, and are willing to help on Sunday mornings, we could definitely use some help on the Sunday Services Committee. The only other announcement this morning is not by me, it's by Debbie Wingard, and it's regarding the close of this year's pledge drive. Good morning, Debbie.
Good morning, everyone. This is the time of year when we're really trying to set the budget because we vote next month. And as you can see from the thermometer here, we have had a good response. We have over 200,000 in pledges from about 80 pledges. The concern is that's still less than last year. And we have had increases, just cost of living hits all of our expenses as well as our homes. So at the moment, we do not have enough to continue our staff at their current rate. It would be, our goal is really to give cost of livings, but at this point, we may even have to cut staff. So if you're one of the 80 pledges we've received, I want to thank you tremendously for your generosity. If there's any way you can increase, please let Linda or me know this week. The board meets on Thursday. If you're one of the 20 or more who pledged last year and just haven't gotten to it, it would really help for us to know what your plans are so that we can estimate what our income will be next year. So again, thanks to everyone who has pledged. We hope to hear from more of you within the next few days, and have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. This morning's speaker, to most of us, should need no introduction. This is the Reverend Dr. Arvid Straube. You were actually the first UU minister I ever heard preach at First Church about 11 years ago. So just wanted to throw that out there that I feel like I've known you now for quite some time. Let's begin by lighting this morning's chalice. Bear with me after bookmarking this morning's chalice lighting words. I now seem to have misplaced them. Bear with me. I'm so sorry. No, that's not the one. No, also not the one. Arvid and I have gone back and forth many times this week, so I have a lot of... Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. There it is. I apologize. This morning's chalice lighting is by Leisha Doge, and it's called A Chalice Lighting for Challenging Times. Why a flaming chalice? The question comes. It's the cup of life, we answer, a cup of blessings overflowing, a cup of water to quench our spirit's thirst, a cup of wine for celebration and dedication, the flame of truth, the fire of purification, oil for anointing, healing. Out of chaos, fear, and horror, thus was the symbol crafted a generation ago. So may it be for us in these days of uncertainty, sorrow, and rage, and a light to warm our souls and guide us home. And now let us join together and sing, while muted, our UU hymn, both in English and in Spanish, to reflect the multilingual culture of our region. Skies, and faith and hope with love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung through every land by every tongue. Well, instead of the video, we did that in sanctuary.
Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you, Barbara. Please join me in our UU aspiration. May love be the spirit of this fellowship. May the quest for truth be its sacrament and service be its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, and to help one another in fellowship. This is our aspiration. This morning, Mary Carter Vale is at Camp Divinity Pines getting ready for summer camp, so she can't be here, but she sends along this morning's Time for All Ages. It's with our theme about evil this morning, and it is called The Answer is in Your Hands. So Dan, if you could play that video for us, thank you.
Good morning. I pre-recorded your story today because I am currently on my way home from Camp Meadville Pines, where I spent the weekend helping with their 60th anniversary celebration. So today's story is from our Moral Tales curriculum, and it comes from the country of India. And this is based on a classic folk tale. So have you ever wanted to be the person who had all the answers? Might sound like a great idea. But let's take a moment and listen to this story and see what you think at the end. So there once was a wise woman who lived by herself in a small village. Rumor had it that she could accurately predict when the rains would come, or help heal a sick child with herbs and medicines that came from the forest, or calm angry neighbors and help them resolve their fights and arguments. People came from far and wide to seek her out and get her advice on matters both small and large. And her reputation was such that it was said she was never wrong, not ever. So some of the children in the village didn't believe it was possible to always be right. Sounds pretty hard, isn't it? So surely she could not know everything. They decided to test her knowledge. First, they asked her questions about the planets, the animals, and the world. And no matter how hard the questions, she always answered correctly. The children were amazed by her knowledge and learning, and most were ready to stop testing the wise woman. However, one child was determined to prove that the old woman couldn't know everything. Hatching a devious scheme, he told all his friends to meet him at the woman's home the following afternoon so he could prove that she was a faker. Well, all through the next day, he hunted for a bird. Finally, he caught a small songbird in his net. So holding it behind his back so nobody could see what was in his hands, he walked triumphantly to the wise woman's house. So remember, the small bird is behind his back. "Old woman," he called, "come and show us how wise you are." The woman walked calmly to her door. "May I help you?" she simply asked. "You say you know everything," he said. "Prove it. What am I holding behind my back?" the young boy demanded. The old woman thought for a moment. She could make out the faint sounds of a bird's wing rustling. "I do not say I know everything, for that would be impossible," she replied. "However, I do believe that you are holding a bird in your hands." The boy was furious. How could that woman possibly have known he had a bird? Thinking quickly, he came up with a new scheme. He would ask the woman whether the bird was alive or dead. If the woman answered alive, he would crush it with his hands and prove her wrong. If she answered dead, on the other hand, he would pull a living bird from behind his back and let her fly away. Either way, he would prove his point, and the wise woman would be discredited. So his plan to be right was to crush and kill the bird in his hands or let the bird fly free, depending on the wise woman's answer. Seems like a really difficult thing, huh? But he was blinded by his need to be right. And he said, "Very good," he called. "It is a bird, but tell me, is the bird I'm holding alive or dead?" The wise woman paused for a long moment while the boy waited with anticipation for his opportunity to prove her wrong. And again, the woman spoke calmly. "The answer, my young friend," she said, "is in your hands. The answer is in your hands." The boy realized that the wise woman had once again spoken correctly and truthfully. The answer was indeed in his own hands, feeling the bird's feeble movements in his hands as it tried to escape his grasp. Suddenly, he felt very ashamed. The answer was in his hands. Slowly and gently, he brought his hands out in front of his body. Looking into the eyes of the delicate bird, he apologized. I'm sorry, little one." And he opened his hands and let her go to the tree. The boy wanted to be right so badly that he almost made a heart-wrenching decision that would cause harm to another being. So, fortunately, the wise woman's words helped him to reconnect to his heart and to know who he was and to solve the problem without causing any harm. Sometimes it's more important to live in love and to be right. So you might come across a situation sometimes where the answer is in your hands and you get to make a choice. Let your heart guide you, and you can make choices that will hopefully help a bird to fly free. That is my story for you today. Have a beautiful Sunday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mary. We're going to go right into our next music video, but to give you a little insight into what it's like to be the Zoom host, I'm going to speak for about another 3 seconds, while Dan, our Zoom host, is able to do the requisite clicks to then play our next piece of music. May nothing evil cross this door.
May nothing evil cross this door, and may your fortune never pry about these windows. May the roar and rain go by. By faith made strong, the rafters will withstand the battering of the storm. This hearth of the world grow chill will keep you warm. Peace shall walk softly through these rooms, touching our lips with holy wine, till every casual corner blooms into a shrine. With laughter drown the raucous shout, and though these sheltering walls are thin, may they be strong to keep hate out and hold love in.
I took a worship class in seminary many years ago, and the professor said, expect 3 things to go wrong and relax. So, okay. This is a series of quotes about evil from some wise people. Terry Pratchett said, evil begins when you begin to treat people as things. The trouble is that we have a bad habit, encouraged by pedants and sophisticates, of considering happiness as something rather stupid. Only pain is intellectual, only evil interesting. This is the treason of the artist, a refusal to admit the banality of evil and the terrible boredom of pain. This is by Ursula K. Le Guin. Soviet dissident, era-dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag Archipelago wrote this: in keeping silent about evil, in burying it so deep within us that no sign of it appears on the surface, we are implanting it, and it will rise up 1,000-fold in the future. When we neither punish nor reproach evildoers, we are not simply protecting their trivial old age, we are thereby ripping the foundation of justice from beneath new generations. On the other hand, Mae West said, between 2 evils, I always pick the one I never tried before. And these words by the ancient Greek playwright Euripides echo very relevant today. When one with honeyed words but evil mind persuades the mob, great woes befall the state. Imaginary evil is romantic and varied. Real evil is gloomy. monotonous, bearing, boring. Imaginary good is boring. Real good is always new, marvelous, intoxicating. Simone Weil, the French feminist and philosopher. Jim Butcher wrote, most of the bad guys in the real world don't know that they're bad guys. You don't get a flashing warning sign that you're about to damn yourself. It sneaks up on you when you aren't looking. And Martin Luther King Jr. wrote, he who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps to perpetrate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it. And Henry David Thoreau said, there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root. Thus ends the reading.
Summit UU is a fellowship that is supported entirely by the voluntary generosity of our members and friends, and we greatly appreciate the faithful pledgers that keep up their pledges every month. We make it easier than ever now to donate to our Sunday plate. The plate will be passed around here in the sanctuary in just moments. We include a link on the order of service online, and we also put a link to it in the chat of the Zoom service this morning. So if you're so motivated to help us here at Summit, we would greatly appreciate your donations. And now we will gratefully accept those donations while we listen to our musical interlude. Good morning again, Barbara.
Morning again. Hello? This is from Three Visions by African-American composer William Grant. Still, this is called Dark Horseman, and my tie-in to Reverend Arvid's sermon is that this is the traditional Christian divine judgment, and you'll hear plenty of vanquishing of evil in this.
This is a time in our service, in our week, when we can breathe and pause and reconnect with the deepest parts of ourselves. And you can take this time to do what is most meaningful for you. You can take it for reflection or prayer or meditation. There'll be a moment of silence after these words. And the words I would want to share with you today is a rendering of the Lord's Prayer, which might give you some new insight into those familiar words by Lala Winkley. And that will be followed by a period of silence. God, lover of us all, most holy one, help us to respond to you to create what you want for us here on earth. Give us today enough for our needs. Forgive our weak and deliberate offenses, just as we forgive others when they hurt us. Help us to resist evil and to do what is good. For we are yours, endowed with your power to make our world whole. May it be so, blessed be. Some years ago, the Rolling Stones recorded a very powerful song called Sympathy for the Devil. Some of those lyrics are, I stuck around St. Petersburg when I saw it was time for a change, killed the Tsar and his ministers. Anastasia screamed in vain. I rode a tank, held a general's rank when the blitzkrieg raged and the bodies stank. Pleased to meet you. Hope you guess my name. So that's one explanation for why evil exists in this world, that there's a organized, intelligent, malicious force that's working to cause destruction, chaos, and suffering on purpose, intentionally. Personified sometimes with the name Satan, the devil, Beelzebub. Now the topic of evil is coming up more and more in conversations because of world events. As Josh said, just recently, the massacre in Buffalo, which was caused by racial hatred. And of course, we've got all the way back, as far as you want to look, Oklahoma City bombing, the 9/11 attacks, the atrocities in Bosnia, Syria, Rwanda, Darfur, and Burma right now. And now the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine and the accompanying atrocities there. I could go on. So the Rolling Stones sing about one of the most pervasive explanations of evil, that it's an intelligent, organized force, often personified as a being, Satan. Now, I thought it might be interesting if we examined how the idea of Satan got started in the first place. The historian of early Christianity, Elaine Pagels, wrote about this in her book, The Origins of Satan. And in the Hebrew Bible, when Satan first appears, it isn't as an evil being. It's as one of God's advisors in the book of Job. So God is bragging about how virtuous his servant Job is, how flawless, how wonderful. And Satan, who his official role was, excuse the expression, the devil's advocate, said, well, yeah, you gave him all these camels and stuff. You know, you made him a wealthy man. Well, what if you started taking all that away? Would he still be virtuous? Or would he turn away from you? So here, Satan was an angel sent by God, an advocate to block a path that may have been bad. And if you do that, it's good. So when then did Satan start to become identified with what's bad and what opposes the divine will? Well, you have to go back to when the Babylonian Empire conquered the kingdom of Judea. And the elite of that kingdom, of those Hebrews, were sent to exile in the city of Babylon, where they ran into an idea that was part of a religion that started in Persia about that time called Zoroastrianism. And in that religion, there are two beings, an evil being and a good being, two gods actually, fighting to a battle to see whether good or evil would ultimately prevail. And the outcome in this religion was not preordained. We don't know, according to that religion at that time. So this was an idea that was gradually adopted when the exiles were finally able to return again to Jerusalem. It became part of what we now know as the Jewish religion. And gradually, Satan and those forces of evil began to be identified with foreign oppressors. The Greeks of Alexander the Great and his successors, and finally the Romans. Now, at the time of Jesus, there was a lot of exile, a lot of unrest happening. And people were expecting the Messiah to come and save them from the evil Romans. People had different ways of approaching that. There was one really radical group called the Essenes who settled almost monastic communities near the Black Sea. That's where they found the Black Sea Scrolls. And they thought they needed to purify themselves and purify the Jewish religion. And Satan, according to them, was influencing those other Jews, those impure Jews. And then Satan shows up. You know, early in Christian history, well over a century, the vast majority of Jesus' followers were Jews. Gentiles only gradually became part of the Christianity. And the Jesus followers saw Satan at work in those Jews who rejected Jesus. And then the early Gentiles, or the early Gentile Christians, saw Satan at work in the pagans who opposed them. In fact, our image of the devil with horns and hooves is actually a very positive nature god in pagan religion, Pan. So suddenly he became the personification of evil. And then all kinds of women and some men through the next centuries were tried as witches, as being possessed by this evil being. People who might have had earth-centered religious rituals, or just anyone you wanted to get rid of. There was a massacre, those witch hunts, for centuries. So we don't have to look only to Europe to see that we demonize those who disagree with us or obstruct our path. But the problem is that calling humans devils has caused more harm than the devil ever did. Do I believe that there is an organized, intelligent force for evil, an evil being? Do I believe in Satan? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I don't agree with the evolutionary biologist and militant atheist Richard Dawkins, who wrote, "The universe we observe has precisely the properties we would expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference." Kind of a buzzkill, Richard. I mean, really? No good and no evil? Really? What about Mozart and Jesus, Buddha, Shakespeare? What about all those beautiful acts of love and caring, day by day, acts in the billions and billions of human beings of tenderness, kindness, and love? No good, no evil. Really? No, there is good and evil. Just don't believe that it's organized and intelligent. Actually, evil is the opposite of intelligent, in my view. It comes out of deep delusion and unconsciousness, and it comes from wounds that have not been addressed and healed. So evil is not intelligent, it's actually darkly unconscious. And one of the main reasons that it exists is that we identify others as servants of the devil, as representatives of evil. Now, I quoted Alexander Solzhenitsyn before, who spent years in the Siberian prison camps for speaking his truth. And, you know, he should know about evil. He wrote, "If only it were all so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessarily only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every being, and who is willing to destroy his own heart?" Yeah, there's a lot of that going on right now, as there always has been. Groups of people identifying other people and seeing if we could only destroy them, evil would not exist. People as varied as Carl Jung and Jesus of Nazareth identified something called projection. Projection is when you don't want to face a part of yourself, a part of your own experience, and you repress it so much that you don't even see it, except when you see it in other people. As they say in the rooms of AA and other 12-step groups, if you spot it, you've got it. So projection means that if you see something in another person and you just hate it and it drives you crazy, look within. There may be some of it there in that other person, but it's there in you too. And it's something that's unconscious and unhealed. It creates what Jung called a shadow. And it makes us do things that harm ourselves and other people until we bring it out into the open and accept it. You know, the thing is, in order to destroy someone, you have to dehumanize them. And that's good news, because what that means is that we're basically good, that we basically have compassion and empathy for other human beings. But if some deep force within and around us, some deep force within our communities makes us want to get rid of somebody because we identify them as evil, then we have to dehumanize them in some way. We cannot see them as fully human if we're going to hurt them or kill them. Many a soldier has gone through a war purposefully trying not to kill an enemy. because we are basically good and compassionate. But there is a part of us that is unconscious. And we need to be aware, or it can cause us harm. And other people too. Hannah Arendt thought about the architect of the Holocaust, Adolf Eichmann, and she noticed what an utterly uninteresting and ordinary man he was. He wasn't even particularly anti-Semitic. He just followed orders, had Sunday dinner, was a family man, thought of himself as ordinary. She called it the banality of evil, the banality of evil. You know, on Halloween, kids want to be Darth Vader. They don't want to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, because in fictional evil, evil is interesting, intriguing, but not in real life. The Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a poem called "Call Me by My True Names." It's a very powerful poem. He heard about sea pirates attacking overloaded boats of boat people fleeing Vietnam for safe harbor, and these pirates would attack those boats, and he heard about one pirate who had raped a little girl. And he said, well, in this poem he said, I'm that little girl. In those circumstances, I would hurt, I would suffer. I suffer hearing about. And then he said, I'm also that pirate who grew up in that situation. He said, call me by my true names. You know, all of us are capable of really bad things under the right circumstances, but also we are capable of the best. And we need to water those seeds of compassion, love, awareness, joy, and service. The Buddha said that there are 3 poisons in the human mind that we need to heal and overcome, and that's these 3 poisons that cause harm to ourselves and others. First is craving, the energy of grasping, wanting more. The second is aversion, trying to push away, to fight, to resist. And finally, delusion, not wanting to see reality that we don't like. So we need to catch those earlier and earlier. But the thing is, we're not enslaved to those people. It's not like to those things. It's not like original sin. We have choices, starting with our thoughts. Which thought do we believe? And which do we just let go? And our words. Which words do we say? Do we say the harsh words we think? Or do we try to speak only words that are useful and kind? Do we see the humanity in everyone, whether they please us or oppose us? Or do we start the process of dehumanizing and rejecting them? My late friend and colleague, Forrest Church, said that almost all evil in the world is committed by people who are 100% certain they are right. So if you're 100% certain you're right about something, think about it. You know, there's so little we know about anything, really. The universe is a vast place. We don't even know the actual quantity of our ignorance. And yet, that's uncomfortable to live in this universe of vast unknowing. We don't like that. So the way human beings have always dealt with that is we've told stories. Stories that give us meaning. Some of these stories are wonderful and healing and empowering stories. and some are not. And the stories we choose make all the difference. And we start sometimes to believe these stories. And if those stories include evil groups and evil people, we've got Buffalo, we have Ukraine, we have so much evil that's going on right now. Because think about it. If you're 100% right, then those people who don't agree with you, what do you do with them? Well, you can dismiss them, look down on them at best. You will try to convert them. And at worst, you'll think it's just fine to destroy them. So here's a mind puzzle. The Dalai Lama said that we're all basically good, and we're just trying to be happy. Every single person. We're just trying to be happy. What that means is that there are some people who are looking for happiness in some very wrong places. But that motive for happiness is good. So, what do we do? It does start with us. And it does start with resisting the evil actions of others without dehumanizing them and rejecting them. Now, there is one fact about human nature that doesn't quite fit with all this, and I feel like I need to tell you about it. Martha Stout, who is a clinical psychologist, has been researching sociopathy, sometimes called sociopathy, and she wrote a book called The Sociopath Next Door. A sociopath is someone with absolutely no conscience, no empathy for other people. And according to her research, 1 in 25 people don't care about the feelings of others at all. It's all about themselves. 1 in 25 people. That means we've all run into them. Many of us have been harmed by them. And we think that a lot of them are in prison, and that's really not true. Only about 25% of people in penitentiaries are sociopaths or psychopaths. Most people in prison just made some really bad choices. She says that corporate life and politics attracts a lot of sociopaths. Now, it's probably genetic, she thinks, but it also has to be cultural because, 4% or so of North Americans are sociopaths, only one in Korea, Japan, and China, less than 1/2% of the population shows these tendencies. And it's probably, she says, because in those cultures, from the very first moments, people are taught to respect the cohesion of the family and the society, the Confucian ideal. So while there may be genes, they need to be activated, and our individualistic culture gives those sociopathic tendencies a lot more scope. But the good news is 96 people out of 100 have compassion. 96 people out of 100 are willing to sacrifice some of their self-interest for other people. 96 people out of 100 want to love and connect, and sociopaths live in a loveless world. She says that their behavior always comes back to destroy them, but often at the cost of great harm to others. So this is a big topic. We barely scratched the surface, but here's what we know. Let's stop blaming the devil. Let's stop blaming whole groups of other people who have different ideas than we do for all the evil in the world. That's a huge cop-out. If we do that, it helps us to refuse to take responsibility for our own individual choices and the choices and actions of the communities that we're part of. It helps us to avoid dealing with the real work of becoming fully human, of healing our own cravings and hatreds and delusions. The devil didn't make us do it. We're choosing to do it, either consciously or not, and we're responsible. It starts with us, each of us, in our own hearts and our own conscience. And now, our next music, one of my favorite hymns, an old Quaker hymn that Pete Seeger took up and added some verses to.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, the far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth that liveth. What though the darkness round me grows, songs in the night it giveth. No storm could shake my inmost heart, while to the rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are ringing. Send friends for shame or undefiled, how can I keep from singing? How can I keep from singing?
Before we close our service by extinguishing our chalice, just want to invite you all to stay afterwards for a time of community gathering, both on Zoom and here in the sanctuary. And I invite you to come back next week when the Reverend Tom Owen Tolles will be in our pulpit. And thanks to Reverend Arvid Straube for his words this morning. The chalice extinguishing words come from Barrow Dunham. And now, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides, and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited will become a world attained. And now if you're in the sanctuary and you'd like to stand and join hands if you're comfortable, or stand and touch elbows, or stand 6 feet apart, however you'd like, we'd like to sing our closing circle song.
for the questions because I tested negative this morning as well.